Welcome to another edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, the series that takes a critical look at Scripture, pointing out its numerous errors, contradictions, and fallacies. This program teaches a kind of Sunday school in reverse by giving you the biblical information that you should have heard but didn't. With millions of Americans hearing a totally one-sided presentation of the Bible, balance is greatly needed. Only when people are given both sides of an issue can a truly objective analysis be possible. And here to provide the alternative perspective is the editor of Biblical Errancy newsletter, Mr. Dennis McKenzie.
Welcome to the 100th edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary. We're pleased you've joined us. This is the third and last in a series of commentaries on the philosophy and strategy lying at the core of our publication in these TV programs. In our last presentation, we began listing some general guidelines in our overall strategy. We can now conclude that litany. Those in opposition to the Bible should focus on pre-tested questions and have a battery of zingers ready for encounters. After giving your opening arguments on the radio, for example, try to discuss what interests callers, because they usually have a group of topics that turn them on. Don't talk about what strikes your fancy when it's of little interest to others. Having a sense of what is activating the audience is very important. In teaching, you wouldn't instruct first graders as you would seniors. And that also applies to the Bible. Methods and content must vary dramatically and be tailored to the audience. Being able to empathize and know when you're hitting home is very important. It's also crucial to realize that activities of this nature involve more than a debate with fundamentalists, because people are on a broad spectrum that ranges all the way from fundamentalists to atheists. Many points appropriate for Christian liberals won't carry weight with conservatives, and vice versa. For that reason, arguments should be directed primarily toward fundamentalists, because that will affect the entire spectrum. By exposing what's wrong with the Bible, everyone is influenced to some degree. All will tend to be moved to the religious left. But if your arguments are tailored only to liberals, millions of conservatives will be unaffected. Moreover, liberals tend to agree with freethinkers on many important topics. To them, the story of creation is figurative, not literal. And Jonah wasn't swallowed by a fish or a whale. That's mythology from their perspective. Many of them, that he's talking about the liberals, many of them reject almost as many events of this nature, as do freethinkers. So an argument in opposition to miracles is not going to carry much clout with liberals. A more effective way to address them would be to say, for instance, now wait a minute, you don't believe in Noah and the flood? You don't believe Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt? You don't believe Jonah was swallowed by a whale or a fish? You don't believe Adam and Eve were real people? Then you don't believe Jesus, because he said these events occurred. If you say they didn't occur, then you're saying Jesus is a liar, and thus he couldn't be God. You're no Christian. That's a valid technique to use against liberals. Zeroing in on the conservatives is also preferable, not only because they are the most vocal opponents of reason and common sense, but also because liberals are so different in their views that refutation of some leaves most untouched. Knowing whom you can reach is very important. Debates with hardened fundamentalists like Falwell or Robertson are all but fruitless, since they have too much at stake. You have to be realistic. What's important is to converse with bibicists of this kind before an audience that is reasonably open-minded and composed of a broad spectrum of religious views. By showing what's wrong with the beliefs of prominent fundamentalists, others will be influenced by what they hear. Changing your debating opponents is not nearly as important as exposing the error of their ways before others. The main focus should be on the audience. Talk to the hardcore when you know people less firm in their views are listening. A major problem with people in the free thought movement is that they're too satisfied with fending off religionists. Bibicists will appear at their door, for example, start a conversation, proselytize, leave some literature, and walk away. The free thought person will then think, "Phew, I got out of that one. He didn't change me. I won that exchange." Oh, no, he didn't. He lost. He lost because religionists are far more numerous than freethinkers, and the latter can only gain by increasing the number of their supporters at the expense of the former. Freethinkers who engage propagandists brought to their doors for deliverance and direct them down the road toward rational thought are the ones who achieve victory. Merely fending off religionists and keeping them at bay is not victory, but defeat. Just because a freethinker is not converted doesn't mean he won by any means. With numbers what they are, freethinkers are in trouble if they don't expand their population. Encounters with bibicists, especially on the air, are like court trials. The Bible is the defendant, the apologist is the defense lawyer, the critic is the prosecutor, the moderator is the judge, and the audience is the jury. Occasionally, you'll have trouble on the air if your host is not neutral. Media people have to be watched very closely because some are tricky. Sometimes, for instance, they'll want to set the agenda by predetermining the topics. That's like asking the prosecutor before the trial what he's going to ask the defendant. Don't tip your hand or allow the line of discussion to be preset. Unsympathetic people will try to channel the line of discussion to where the Bible is not so vulnerable. But I know where it's weakest, and that's where I want to go. Another tactic that wouldn't be allowed in a court of law is interruption after the first question. A prosecutor is allowed to present his case without interruption, and an opponent of the Bible should be accorded no less. Then if people want to criticize, so be it. But a critic of the Bible should at least be allowed to state his case to the public. Many hosts don't even allow that. You present one point and you're immediately pounced upon. All appearances should be tape recorded for reasons that will be explained later. And finally, some crucial requests need to be made prior. These are requests to the host prior to appearing on the radio. First, ask for a tape recording of your appearance. Second, ask to have your name, address, and phone number broadcast. Third, ask to be allowed to tell people that free samples of your materials are available. Fourth, ask to be allowed to choose the opening questions. And lastly, ask if you're going to be on with an opponent. Not long ago, I appeared on a California radio station and wasn't told I would be debating the founder of the Pensacola Bible Institute until 5 minutes before